Welcome to Shoot Like a Girl, a podcast featuring interviews with extraordinary military women from around the world who push their limits on and off duty. I'm your host, Kate Stewart, and this is episode number 25. Today's guest is Stephanie Simon. Stephanie is a former active duty, now reserve officer in the United States Marine Corps. She's an Amphibious Assault Officer, and she has a very long list of accomplishments. She wrestled in high school, but began boxing at the United States Naval Academy. At the Academy, she was also a member of the Glee Club and captain of the track and field team. On top of all that, she plays 5 musical instruments. She's a 3-time Collegiate National Boxing Champion and a 3-time Team USA National Champion. We hope to see her in the ring at the Paris Olympics in 2024.
Steady, steady, nice and steady. Light, hill, cover. I'm a steamroller, baby.
I'm a steamroller, baby.
Just a rolling down the line.
Just a rolling down the line.
I'm a steamroller, baby.
I'm a steamroller, baby.
Just a rolling down the line.
Just a rolling down the line.
So you better get out of my way now.
So you better get out of my way now.
Or I roll all over you.
Before I roll all over you.
So yeah, we'll officially get into it now. So Stephanie, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I know it's sort of been a long time coming. We both had busy schedules, and it is a small world because I had Andrea Howard on and she suggested that I have you on, and I was like, yes, I follow her on Instagram and I think she's awesome. So totally worked out.
She's incredible. She sings, she's super smart, she's good at everything. Like, she's amazing. So that's awesome that you guys got in contact with her. She was one of like the nicest people for the Naval Academy. So small world.
She seems just incredibly intelligent as well. So yeah, super glad to have you on. So where are you from?
So I was born in Atlanta, lived there for about 7 years, but I grew up in Washington State. So like 2002, moved over to Vancouver, Washington, which is about 10 minutes from Portland, Oregon. So I grew up, in like the evergreen trees with all the mountains and basically Twilight. Imagine a Twilight movie. It was like that. So it's kind of like much different than where I live now. I live in Miami, Florida now. The confusing thing is that most of my family is actually in Miami, even though I grew up in Washington, basically opposite ends of the country. So I moved here after I got out of active duty in May, and this is my new home for now.
Okay, yeah, a lot different. I grew up on the East Coast in Nova Scotia, but now I've been living in Victoria for the past 5 years-ish. So that nice Pacific Northwest, same sort of environment. So
Same vibe. I'm actually technically Canadian because my dad was born in Montreal, but I don't claim it too much because it sounds weird.
Is he French?
Yeah. I think his mother or father, he was adopted, so he doesn't really know his family, but he was born in Montreal. His real name is Jean-Jacques Houdon, so I think he's French.
Very
He
French.
got his name changed and stuff, so.
Yeah,
kinda cool.
the French are big on the hyphenated names. Like I find all the women, they're like Mary Pierre or Mary Joelle or like they all have hyphenated names.
Some kind of hyphen, yeah.
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 So obviously I've been following you on Instagram for a while and I see that you post pictures from when you were a kid in the band and that sort of thing. So what sort of activities were you into growing up?
So as a kid, I got into like track and field probably in like, I don't know, maybe 3rd, 4th grade. And then Taekwondo, I started doing Taekwondo when I turned 9. And that was like the big transition for me into like combat sports. That was the first combat sport I ever did. And then I was very, very musically inclined and involved as well. I took piano lessons for a couple of years and then started doing band in 5th grade as well. So I was one of those kids that was kind of like just interested in everything and wanted to do everything. Started wrestling at 11. I did that for about 6, 7 years. And then, cross country, continued track and field, actually all the way through college. And then in college also was in the Glee Club. So I kind of did this like, I don't know, maybe a truce with myself that I would continue to pursue athletics and music after high school, which is kind of cool because, usually you kind of give it up. You're like, yeah, I'm not going to do choir in college, but had a unique opportunity to do that at the Naval Academy. And we were like able to travel the country and do tours, and it was great. We did that twice a year. Big Christmas performance as well. And So yeah, like I said, starting at a young age, I was pretty much involved in as many extracurricular activities as I could possibly do. And then I maintained pretty good academics. I did pretty well in school as well. I didn't, I was never like, you know, straight A student. I pretty much failed all the AP tests, so I struggled with that part. But I did pretty well academically.
Yeah, I mean, if you got into the Naval Academy, which I heard is pretty difficult, so you must have done not too bad. It's interesting, I find with you, or maybe I just didn't know enough people growing up that were into both, but I find people were either athletic or into music, and there's not many people who are like really talented at both. All of these activities, was this because you wanted to try all of it, or were your parents kind of like, we need to find an outlet for her energy?
For sure. And it was pretty much all my interests. And I didn't mention football, but I only played football in the summers with my uncle in Miami because my mom actually didn't let me do football like for a real season. And I don't blame her for it just because it is pretty dangerous. But I don't think she knew, or I knew actually at the time that I ended up being a boxer. But the good thing about boxing though is it's female. There's a female division and male division. And with football, there wasn't. So and even with wrestling, there were times where, once I hit a certain age, the guys started hitting puberty, and there was a big distinction between strength, especially strength per weight ratio. I was walking around 130 pounds, but the guys were like starting to fill in and become stronger. And so, even with that sport where it's mostly guys, it was hard. It was hard once they started getting stronger. And with football, it's a little bit more dangerous because it's contact. So that's kind of why my mom didn't let me do football uh, past that like summer type, summer training football. So, but yeah, everything I did was because I wanted to. I think that there were times where, especially with band, a lot of people don't realize it, but band is ruthless. Like we were doing band camp, and you think it's like the movie, but there were times where we were outside in 104-degree weather for 12 hours for 2 weeks training and practicing and like doing our little marching stuff. And yeah, it sounds nerdy, probably like what the heck is she talking about? But it was hard. And I think a lot of the discipline I have and a lot of the structure I have and a lot of the attributes that I carry with me, it comes from honestly from band and from sports.
It's a bit different in Canada too, or definitely where I grew up. So when you're involved in the band, is this doing big marching things at sports games and that sort of thing?
Yes, you have that, and then you have like the competitive marching band where you make all these formations and you have to memorize 10 minutes of music by heart as well as like 30 to 40 pages of movements. Like it's pretty intense. The halftime football games, we do that as well. So I was involved in not just like band, but I was involved in everything: jazz band, marching band, concert band. I did all of it, and I think that's kind of why my musical development over time got to where it is now. Like I can hear harmonies and I can hear different aspects of music that I don't think most people can, but it's because I was exposed to it at a young age. Jazz is like one of the hardest, most intricate types of music, and because I did jazz band, I could hear, oh wow, this sounds weird, and obviously the teachers would talk about theory, but I didn't pay attention half the time. But I paid attention to a good portion of it and was able to learn from that. And with marching band, totally different than jazz band. Um, that's where a lot of the intense like practicing and the training 2 times a week or 2 full weeks out of the summer every day for like a whole year included. That was more marching band. So, but yeah, there's a lot of different in America. There's a lot of different types of programs you can do that's considered band. But for me, I did all of them that you could possibly do, and it took a lot of time and took a lot of effort. And I got screamed at a couple times because I was doing sports. Most of the kids were not. So there were times where I'd come into rehearsal late, and music directors. People don't know this. A lot of people don't know this, but music directors are more cutthroat and more savage and rude than coaches. Like saying stuff like that makes me sick. Whatever note that was, I don't know who that was, but you should just go ahead and leave this room. I'm like, oh my gosh, we're like 13 years old, man. Chill out. So and even in college, I was like, some of the things I would hear, I'm like, that's more mean than my coach, who's a boxing guy. Like, what the heck? So definitely had to have thick skin, going through all that for sure. So
Yeah, I knew a girl she was really into dance, and she was telling me how strict the dance instructors were. And I was like, this sounds worse than the military. She's like, if you have like a hair out of place in your bun, they'll kick you out of class. And like if you yawn in class, like you're gone. But so with all these activities, did that sort of force you to learn time management at a really early age?
Oh yeah, for sure. Because a regular day in high school was wake up at 5 something, go to jazz band rehearsal, start class, um, and then after school, I was trying to balance band with taekwondo and wrestling, and then obviously the sports would switch during the year. But I was having to learn how to literally manage like 2 to 3 different extracurriculars in conjunction with school. And I was doing that at like 14, 15 years old. And so that's probably why the Naval Academy ended up accepting me, because it wasn't because of academics, I'll be honest. I went to the Naval Academy prep school. I didn't get in directly to the academy. I had to go to the prep school. That's usually where they send the jocks to get, freshened up on academics. So, but they were looking for well-rounded people. And because I was able to juggle and manage all of that with school and like succeed, and I had leadership experience, being in all those different sports and stuff, it actually aligned perfectly with the Naval Academy, because that's what they're looking for. Because at the end of the day, an officer, you have to be well-rounded. If you're like a book nerd, super, robotic and stuff, like it's gonna be hard for you to relate to your Marines or sailors or airmen, whichever branch you're in. But then if you're too laid back and you're like the athlete, cool jock, then it's gonna be a little bit difficult for you to get things done and to have that like, structure and that, I don't know, that discipline of someone that is more on the academic side. So that's why they're looking for people that are a little bit of everything. So like I said, it all fit together. Everything I did in high school, it like it all came together, especially because my dad, I know you're going to ask this later, but my dad was a Marine for 23 years. He's a Marine officer, and he was kind of putting the bug in my ear in like 6th grade. And I was like, no, Dad, I want to wrestle in college. I want to wrestle in college. And at the time, this is like 2009, women's wrestling was not as big as it is now. Now it's huge. Like D1 colleges are starting to have programs and stuff, which wasn't a thing back in my day. And so the opportunities were not there. And I had to make a big decision, like 11th, 12th grade. Was it like go to a small college that's not very good and do what I want, which is wrestle, or go to the Naval Academy where they don't really have a wrestling team and I don't get to do the sport I want. And it was hard to weigh the two, but I went with the Naval Academy. So
And so what made you pick Navy over or Marines over, say, Air Force or Army?
at the Naval Academy, you either commission as a naval officer or as a Marine. I applied to West Point, which is Army, halfway through, and I got accepted into Naval Academy. But I wanted to go to the Naval Academy because I didn't really have an interest in the Army or any of the other branches. I also didn't have the grades to go to Air Force Academy because you have to have really good grades for the Air Force Academy. They expect a lot on the academic side, so I kind of ruled that one out. And my dad also had aspirations to go to the Naval Academy when he was younger. It didn't work out, but he had a stepson who also went, so it was almost just like, and then his best friend went, so it was just like all these different coincidences and I don't know, signs that maybe it was like probably a good of the other service academies, the one that would be best suited for me. Now, I didn't know whether or not I wanted to go Navy or Marine Corps until like my sophomore year. Um, it's a funny story just because the reason why I chose the Marine Corps was because I didn't want to be on ships and I didn't want to do the Navy stuff. And then I ended up choosing a job in the Marine Corps, which requires me to be on ships. So it was like kind of an oxymoron. I'm an amphibious assault officer. I still am. I'm in the reserves. But I ended up doing what I was trying to avoid.
It's interesting, and I've said this sort of on some of my other podcasts, but in Canada, we don't, like, we're so small, right? So we don't have Army, Navy, Air Force Academy. Like everyone goes to the same military college. And it's it's kind of weird because you have to choose your occupation before you're even accepted. So, these kids are 18 and they might not have any idea what, actually being an artillery officer or, a naval warfare officer is like, but that's what they sign up for. And then they go to school. I think, some of them end up switching here and there, but it's like you need to make that decision before your first year kind of thing.
That's insane. That's like, I can't imagine because you don't really know. I mean, that age, you don't really know what you know what your strengths and weaknesses are, kind of, but not really until you actually, I feel like you get into like your 20s, like early 20s.
Yeah, and it's based on, I don't know, like a 45-second recruiting video that you see online that kind of shows you obviously like the highlights of the job, but not the big picture. And so what was it like going to the Naval Academy?
The first 6 months were pretty bad. Like, no, bad in like the academic slash who the heck am I slash I feel so out of place bad. Not like oh gosh, I don't belong here. Like I'm not cut out for it. It was more like this is another level of like pace and of just expectation. I thought I was like pretty cool in high school. I thought I was, the bee's knees. And then I went to the academy where there were people that got into Harvard and Yale and all these like Ivy League schools and who were brilliant, but also like athletic and maxing all their PT tests. And so I was just surrounded by people that, you know, really made me look inward and like kind of have to reflect like, man, I got to work on myself and I got to get better because I can see where my deficiencies are. Now I'm starting to see like I was a big fish in a little pond and now I'm a little fish in a big pond. So it was definitely that first 6 months was like a wake up call and also very humbling. The prep school helped me academically for like the first couple months. And then by the time we were 3 months in, we had already completed everything that we had done the entire year at that prep school. If that makes sense, to basically condense what we had learned at the prep school into like 3 months of freshman year at the academy. So it just goes by quick. It's a fire hose of information. And like, not only that, but you're expected to go to formations, to be on time to everything, to make it to your athletic requirements, whatever that may be. And for me, I signed up for, freaking Glee Club. I was doing track and field and I was doing boxing and doing school. So it was just, in that with the military obligations, it was just so much and it was overwhelming. And yeah, I felt like, man, like this is harder than I thought, And then sophomore year, I started getting a little bit more comfortable with myself, but then I mistakenly chose a major that was not for me. I chose operations research, and that is like, I've always been good at math, but this is like next level. I mean, I was sitting in class, and there were times where I was blown away. I was like, this can't even be real. Like this information is going through one ear and out. It's not even going through. It's going like around the top of my head and then going out the other ear. I do not understand. And I would go to all the extra, credit. It's called EI. The Naval Academy would call it EI, extra instruction. I would go to all of the ones that the teachers had, and I was trying to learn the information, trying, and it just wasn't going through. And by the end of the second semester sophomore year, I think I had like a 1.7 GPA. And at the Naval Academy, if you don't graduate with a 2.0, you don't commission. You don't graduate. And so I knew at that point I was on track to not commission if I had continued with the major. I knew that if I continued to like scrape by and get a bunch of D's and C's, that I wasn't going to make it. And so that was one of the first times where I had to like look at myself in the mirror and go, swallow your pride and switch your major to general science. And, sounds easy, general science, but we had to take underwater sonar acoustics. We had to take, we still had to take like electrical engineering. We still had to take thermodynamics, biology. We still had to take a plethora of classes that were super hard, but it just wasn't as in depth as the major that I was in. And so, yeah, for that part of sophomore year was like extreme adversity that I had to overcome because I was giving everything I had. I was trying my best. in academics, and it just wasn't working. So I had to switch majors, and then things got a lot better after that. And by the time I was a junior, I felt like, wow, I enjoy this now. Like this is really fun. This is great. I love the people. I love the extra, doing boxing, doing track and Glee Club and traveling the country and performing and singing. This is amazing, but it took a few years.
Yeah, it's interesting, how you were talking about the previous program and how difficult it is, but it just shows that, for some people it's not the right fit for them, and it's like, but then put them in something else and they'll excel at it. So everyone kind of just needs to find that space that they excel in.
100%. And it's called talent management in the Marine Corps. There's definitely room for growth for that. I feel like even at the academy, I would notice people would be good at certain things, but it didn't seem like they were applying themselves in that area very well, because they were like, oh, I have to do this. This is what I meant to do. Because if I do this, it'll set me up for X, Y, and Z. And they were so focused on like the future that they weren't realizing that if they lived more in the present and like took what they were good at and applied their talents in something that, like they're better at, it might just make things better. But you know how it is.
And so mentally, how did you deal with the pressure? Because I feel like you said, the pressure of the grades, the pressure of, I'm going to be an officer in the Marine Corps. Like, I have to excel at sports and activities and academics and all of that. How did you deal with that?
I think the biggest thing was I felt and I focused on like the idea that I was meant to be there, and that like my purpose and my mission was to become an officer, and that whatever divine, God, the universe, whatever you believe in, I truly believe that I was there for a reason, and that it was like my destiny to not just get through, but to succeed. And that when like there is that really strong sense of mission and sense of purpose in where you are, and when you feel like this is exactly where I'm supposed to be, what I'm supposed to be doing, and it's going to suck right now, it might suck along the way, but that's only temporary. That's really what drove me to get through and to push through and to like almost I don't know, just like embrace the pressure. Especially with boxing. I mean, I fought the same girl one time, like 3 years in a row. I had lost to her 2 times in the previous years, and then we were teammates though, so it was like the brigade / school boxing tournament. The third time that we fought, it was a big one because she was going for her 4th brigade title, and it was also the 75th annual brigade championship. So 60 Minutes was doing a whole segment on this. So there was a lot of pressure, a lot of cameras, and people talking mad crap that I wasn't going to win. And like, but then again, like I said, there was a strong sense of like purpose and a strong sense of this is exactly how it's supposed to be, how it's supposed to play out. Because you thrive under pressure and you thrive when you are the underdog. That's something that's been the case for me since I was a kid, because I've kind of always been the underdog, especially being in mostly male dominated sports. But like I said, that sense of purpose and feeling like no matter what gets thrown at me, no matter what happens, I'm going to find a way to win. I'm going to find a way to succeed. I'm going to find a way to push through all odds, all adversity, because that's what I've been put here to do. And because of that, I've been able to come back and succeed, even though I technically wasn't supposed to. And yeah, nothing's ever been easy. Starting at a very young age, it's always been like I hit a wall or I get punched in the face, literally, figuratively. And then that's when I wake up, and then I really start realizing my worth and realizing, oh, wow, I am supposed to be here. I am good enough. That's kind of how the story of my life has been. It's never like, oh, she's just so great at everything. She always kills it at everything. Oh my gosh. Like, no, like there were times where I almost got kicked out of Glee Club because I could not figure out the words to the songs. Like, I couldn't remember the words. So my director was like, if you don't start learning the words, like you can't be in this program, And then even the Naval Academy, if you continue this route, these grades, you're going to get kicked out, right? If you continue X, Y, and Z down this path of failure and chaos, you're not going to make it. So I've been told that, and I've heard that many times. And I think that people might not know that about me and might not know that about other people as well, because we like to only show the great, the good, beautiful, grand part of our careers and our lives, the happy part, the success and the trophies, you know?
Yeah, I think it's so important to talk about the struggles too, because for some people who are going through that, they might think like, oh, well, this person never experienced it because they're so good at everything and everything's always gone well for them, when really that's not the case, but they just don't know because that person had never openly talked about their struggles or anything like that, right? And it's so interesting that you said, you talked about thriving as the underdog, because for some people that would probably just mentally derail them before a fight or a big sporting event.
Oh, yeah, 100%. Like I kind of mentioned earlier about the mission and purpose and having that feeling of like, this is where I'm supposed to be. I feel like that truly does take a lot of pressure off, because in that feel like, for me, I feel like I believe in like destiny and like your future. Um, I believe that like when you are put somewhere for a reason, that the only person that can mess it up is you as an individual. And when you start making it about you, me, and I'm stressing, oh, what if I can't, oh my gosh, like I'm not good enough. Oh, once you start getting into that rabbit hole of I, me, like, oh my gosh, do I have the tools? Did I train hard enough? And you start questioning, that's when everything starts to fall apart. And what I do, especially with boxing, to like mitigate that is do a lot of meditation and a lot of prayer and a lot of breathing and a lot of focusing and visualization. You know, if you keep visualizing yourself doing the same thing over and over again. I visualize myself at times walking through the arena, like of a UFC pay-per-view, and I can see everybody, and I'm walking, and I'm smiling, and I'm walking out to Everybody by Backstreet Boys, because that always gets everyone pumped up. But I visualize it and I see it, you know, and I see myself being an Olympian. I see myself doing these things that I've wanted to do since I was a small kid. Because then when you get there, it's not a surprise. When you don't visualize, when you don't truly believe that you can do those things, then when you get there, you're like, oh God, am I good enough? You know, like, am I cut out for this? I don't know. If you see it, and Conor McGregor talks about it, even though he's kind of a piece of crap because he's super rich and full of himself now, but he's like, before I knocked out Jose Aldo, I saw it in my head. I took a step back and I knocked him out with the two, and that's exactly what I did. And he did, because he saw it in his head over and over and over again. And even Jorge Masvidal, you know, the guy that has the fastest knockout in UFC history, he did a flying knee. He said, I pictured it in my head a billion times before I did that. And that's one of the biggest reasons why people are able to do these things that most people would kind of crack under pressure if they were to do them, or at least try. So
That was a good Irish accent.
thank you.
Yeah, it's funny that you were saying, talking about once you get to that point where you've won. So my husband was watching football the other day, and I was kind of watching afterwards the interview, and there was this young quarterback who had done so well, and he was just sitting there really calm, and the interviewer was like, oh, you seem like this is exactly what you knew was going to happen. And he was just kind of like, yeah, that's kind of how I'm feeling. So that's like the same mindset that you're describing there.
I think too, we had at the Olympic Training Center, we had a couple of sports psychologists come talk to us. And humans, like, we have negative thoughts all the time, and that's actually normal. And I didn't actually realize that until they talked about it, because I was like, I thought I was crazy. I thought I was just super negative. But no, we actually have a lot of negative thoughts. That's like a normal thing. Like, we're our own toughest critics and our harshest, we judge ourselves a lot. But I think that when you try to stop those thoughts, when you try to like force them not to come in your brain, like, no, don't think that, it does the opposite. So in my opinion, I think the best way to handle that is to just kind of let it float. Those thoughts of insecurity, those thoughts of self-doubt, you realize that it's not your thought. It's a thought, it's a suggestion, it's something that, it's an idea, but it doesn't have to be yours. And as soon as you take ownership of that doubt, of that thought, and you make it yours, that's when things start to kind of go haywire, because now you're starting to believe whatever that thought is. But just because it's something that comes across your brain doesn't mean that it belongs to you. We think all sorts of crazy things. And sometimes I'm like, I'm going to punch that mother, in the face, but you're not actually going to do it. Just because you just think of something doesn't mean that you're going to do it or that it's like legitimately something that you're considering. So for me, I had to do that the entire tournament that I just came back from, the national championships, because there were times in my brain I was like, yep, you should have just continued the journey of, moving on to the pros. No point in even trying to do this Olympic thing. If I had a penny for every time that idea just kind of floated, and instead of saying, no, don't think that, I just let it float away. That's not a part of me. That's a suggestion. I'll let it go away, and that worked really well for me. And that's worked well for me in a lot of these tournaments where there is a lot of pressure, a lot of like anxiety, is I just let it go.
So all of these strategies and techniques that you're describing from your athletic endeavors, did you also apply those to military courses?
I'm starting to, and it's making a huge difference. And I don't think that, no, I really didn't apply it when I was active duty in the beginning, because I was kind of young and naive and still learning how to be an officer and how to be an adult. But I honestly didn't at the time, but I'm starting to now, and it's making a difference. To just like, I don't know, I have more of a stoic mindset now, especially as a reservist. I've done my active duty time, so now I basically do Marine Corps stuff once a month for a weekend. But now that I've been to several different units and I've experienced a good amount of different types of leadership and different types of people, there's no real surprises anymore. And again, the insecurities and like I'm gonna check in and no one's gonna respect me because I'm a female, which at times that can be the case, but when you let it overwhelm you, or when you let it take over your mind and that's all you think about, and you're no longer enjoying yourself and having a good time and enjoying the situation you're in, then life can become miserable very quickly. And so when I checked into my new unit, I had a sense of lightheartedness and a sense of humility that I had maybe not had in the past. I'm not saying I was cocky, but I kind of had more of like a chip on my shoulder in the past of like, here we go again, time to deal with all the, sexism and all this other stuff. But this time around, when I checked in, I spent the whole week talking to people and mostly listening, asking them questions, getting to know people, picking their brains, hearing about their military experience and making them feel heard. Then about 2 days into me being at the unit, like one of the Marines' wives who had been there the whole week, she's like, everyone's like talking about you and saying that they love you. I'm like, oh, really? And I told her, I was like, all I did had been listening. I'm like, wow. But I wasn't going around telling them, did you know I'm a 3-time national champion and I'm about to go to the Olympic Training Center and I'm about to go train to become on Team USA? And yeah, I could have done that. And I could have been showing off and bragging about myself and my accomplishments. Do you know that I'm the first amphibious assault, officer female on the East Coast? And they don't care. Like people when you're new, especially, like, they're judging you. They're like, who's this new person? And they want to see if you're real. They want to see if you're this or that. So the best thing you can do, if you're new especially, is to just listen and get to know people. And this is all stuff that I had not done really necessarily in the past in active duty, and just going into this more mature and just more experienced. A lot less surprises, a lot less overreacting, and just kind of like we talked about earlier, going in with that like same mindset that I have when I go into fights, of just being calm, being level-headed, and living in the moment, and I don't know, just relax.
And so what made you want to become an amphibious assault officer?
So in the Marine Corps, combat arms is what we call it. So anything like infantry, artillery, amphibious assault, tanks, anything where you're dealing with guns or like people in the front lines, that is kind of an entity of itself. And then you have more like the support, so like logistics, supply, admin. I'd always felt that because of my physicality and because I had been um, always been good physically, sports and athletic, whatever, that something like combat arms would be a better fit for me. And because I'm kind of a go-getter and I like to do things that are intense. But I didn't want to do infantry because I know that infantry is like they're very, very, very hardcore, and they're very in the Marine Corps they're very like, let's get some, all crazy and stuff. Like, and so I knew that I wasn't that intense when it came to like just military mindset and all that. But I definitely wasn't someone that would do well in an office. So I kind of found something that was in between, which was, in my opinion, being an amphibious assault officer. I'm basically in charge of like 50 Marines and responsible for 15 to 20 of these amphibious vehicles. They're basically tanks that go in the water that have machine guns. And we take the infantry guys from the ship to the shore, or from the shore to like a ship out in the ocean. So it's cool because my whole career I worked with infantry people, but was never in the infantry. So I got to appreciate and see how they operated and basically be their support while still getting out there and doing, the cool shooting and all that stuff. So it was a good combination. A lot of field ops, um, a lot of ranges and stuff. But at the same time, I still spent a good amount of time in the office doing all the paperwork and everything. So for me, it was a good balance in that sense. But in terms of me being accepted by the community, that's a whole nother story. Like I said earlier, I was the first female officer, amphibious assault officer on the East Coast. So all of Camp Lejeune, they never had a female platoon commander for the AAV community. And so it hurt when I got there and I had peers telling me, "Oh, your platoon already looked you up online, and they found out that you're a female." And a lot of them are upset, and a lot of them are like, "Come on, man, are you serious? We got her." I was like, "Dang, I haven't even been here a week. I haven't even like taken over the platoon yet, and people are already upset. Like I haven't even had a chance to check in and like to prove myself." And um, I remember the day I heard that, and it was like a slap in the face, but also like a slap of reality that I and women in general are not held to the same standard. Like we don't show up and it's like, "Oh, new lieutenant." It's, "Oh, new female lieutenant." It's always female in front of it, especially in a community where it's 95% men. So that was hard, but I found a way to overcome that. I found a way to, like I said, get to know my Marines and figure out how their minds worked, and kind of figure out what inspires them, what doesn't inspire them, what annoys them. And it was interesting because a lot of times people thought that I was like a troop lover, someone that cared too much about what the troops felt, almost like mama bear. But in reality, I mean, we were structured. We did everything on paper that was expected, but I actually listened to them and I talked to them and I treated them like human beings. I didn't ever let them call me by my first name, but I wanted to know about their families. I wanted to know about their background. I wanted to know about who they were. And if something bad happened, if something was not right, I wanted to know that too. And I would smile, and I would again, make them feel like they were human. And I don't know if it was because I was a woman that it came across as too friendly. Not that people were saying I was flirting around or anything, but I just noticed that that wasn't the norm there. Being someone that was compassionate was not the norm. And that's instantly one of the biggest things that made me kind of an outlier, other than the fact that I was a female. But um, yeah, that hurt when that was the other like heartbreak. It was like, dang, that's really what people think. I'm literally just trying to be a good person, because we're people first before we're Marines. We're people before we're the name tag on our chest. We're people first. And the thing is if you don't feel loved, if you don't feel appreciated, you will never perform at work. You'll never do anything as good as you would if you had felt like you're cared for. And that's like scientifically proven. You look at like trauma, you look at young people who grew up in rough homes where they weren't loved and how they end up. You know, they're usually addicts. They're usually people in rough spots. And ironically enough, you notice that the Marine Corps and the military in general, it has a lot of people that had hard lives growing up, people that weren't loved, people that are trying to look for a sense of family, people that are trying to look for somewhere where they feel like they belong, and then they show up and then they don't get treated that way, and it's like it's a disappointment. And so that's really all I ever cared about, was making, you know, my Marines feel like they were cared about. And, you know, unfortunately, caring for your Marines, caring for your people, it's not the same definition for every unit, for every MOS. And so that's okay. You know, that's kind of how it is. That's life.
And so did their attitudes towards you change once they got to know you, or were you still having a hard time with
Yes.
that?
And the younger Marines, whenever I did have a unit, or I did have a platoon, the younger Marines, they would turn a leaf and they would realize, okay, she actually does care. You know, she's legit. She just did 20 pull-ups. She just outran us. She just boxed us. We did freaking boxing. And I proved to them and I showed them that I met the standard that they were expecting of an officer, regardless of the fact that I was a female. Where I usually had issues was with the older Marines, people in charge, or, you know, even like the old school guys. I had a hard time with them. And I think it was a mixture of just the authoritative mindset. You know, it's hard because, like, I'm not saying that officers don't get taken care of, but in my MOS and a lot of combat arms MOSs, especially in the Marine Corps, it's like, you know, welcome to the officer corps, good luck. And even in the surface warfare community, officers tend to eat their own. And we get, especially the young new ones, like, we get tasked a lot. We get a lot of responsibility. I was in charge and I was responsible for like $100 million worth of equipment and 60 dudes, right? But like a lot of times I didn't feel a whole lot of support. It's a, you know, combination, a mixture of just the operation tempo. There's a lot of stuff going on. Like, people don't have time to care about, you know, the officers, but part of it also was, like I said, that cutthroat, you know, welcome to the officer corps, you know, get effed, mofo. Like, that's kind of how it is. And that's not just a Marine Corps thing. That's across the services. You got to have thick skin, and you got to expect the unexpected. You also have to expect that people are not going to necessarily pick you up when you fall. You're going to have to pick yourself up. And I don't know if that's because, oh, we have a commission and we went to college, that we're expected to not have feelings and we're just robots, but it's difficult. It's difficult. And luckily now, and even towards the end of my active duty career, I met a lot of really great officers that did care about my well-being and did care about me as Stephanie first, and then, you know, Lieutenant Simon. That was not as important for them. And when I met them, I realized, you know, wow, there really are good officers out there. There really are good leaders. I just had to find them, and I just had to be open to branching out of my MOS. And surprisingly enough, the most amazing officer I've ever had was an infantry guy, a guy too, Captain Miller. And he's still in and everything, and it's like my big brother, you know. But yeah, the love and the care and like that compassion, it's out there, but sometimes you do have to go looking for it a little bit.
Yeah, I think even with the Canadian military, sort of, I'm in the Navy, so we're not overly, you know, hardcore, but the old, more hardcore generation where the leadership to them was like yelling and treating people like crap, I think now the new generation is realizing that's not particularly effective. And I've had some awesome leaders who are just like you described, who listen to people and actually care about their subordinates and want to help them excel.
That's amazing, isn't it? Night and day.
Yeah, it really is. So, did you do deployments on
I
ship?
did one deployment, very short deployment on ship. We're supposed to go to Norway, but we had an incident on the ship because of there was like 20-foot waves where we had mini boats, like tiny boats within the ship, that broke loose. And so imagine there's these, like, it's a LCU, LCAX. we're basically moving freely in the well deck and completely destroyed the inside of the ship. So we ended up being stuck in port in Iceland for like 3 weeks, and then we went to England for about a week. But long story short, yeah, we went out there. We did a short exercise slash deployment. It had turned more into like a vacation because we were in port for so long. Um, didn't see combat, didn't see anything crazy, didn't see any intense, action or anything like that. But we went overseas, and the interesting part about my job is I have to coordinate not just with the AAV community and my people, but I also have to coordinate with the Navy and the ship, as well as the infantry guys, because like I said earlier, my job as a platoon commander in the AAV community is I basically take the infantry from like a beach all the way out to the ship, which can be, in our case, 10,000 meters out in the middle of the ocean somewhere. Um, get them all on safely with these amphibious tanks that, by the way, are like from the 70s, super old. Have had a lot of issues to get all of us onto a ship, and then off the ship as well. So it's a very dangerous job. It's a very stressful job, and in terms of coordination and like finding the exact point of where to, to basically get on the ship, like you have to like convert latitude and longitude and grid and all this stuff, and you have to make sure that the point is actually where it is, because those vehicles can only be in the water for a certain amount of time before they start running out of fuel and they start breaking down. So it's scary. It's scary, and you don't realize it when you're in the action. You being in the Navy, you don't realize how dangerous the job is, regardless if you're in a combat environment, until you kind of take a step back and go like, wow, we're on a ship somewhere in the middle of the ocean. Like, wow, that's actually pretty dangerous. It's in a lot of ways, and especially with the job that I did, there have been people that have lost their lives within the last couple of years. Just with even the sea state and the waves, it's just it's intense stuff. And I'm glad that I had such a great team, and I'm glad I had such a good group of Marines that I worked well with. And the key leaders were definitely mature and knew what they were doing, so we were able to manage all that responsibility and able to do that deployment successfully.
Yeah, those are, I mean, there was an incident, was it like maybe 2 years ago in San Diego? Yeah, I heard about that and I'm like,
It's hard.
it sounds so dangerous. Yeah.
It's hard, man. It's like they stopped doing all water operations after that, so we're currently not taking those vehicles in the water right now. There's new vehicles that are coming out pretty soon called the ACVs, and they're wheeled. They got wheels instead of tracks, and they're working on getting those out there. So we'll see what goes on with that. But um, yeah, I'm very fortunate that nothing like that happened with our Marines.
It's dangerous. I mean, sometimes people say, "Oh, I didn't go to combat or I didn't do whatever." But I mean, even like the Canadian forces, like we've had like a really bad few years for training accidents. It's like we're not involved in an active conflict right now, and we've had a lot of deaths over the past few years just from training incidents where you're like, I'm at home or I'm just doing something that's so routine, should be safe, but there's always that possibility that something could go wrong. So it's dangerous every
It
day.
is. No, it is.
So tell me about the Marine Corps boxing
All
team.
right. Well, the Marine Corps boxing team had been around for several decades up until about 2012 or 13, and then they got rid of the team. And then in 2016, they like brought it back kind of, but not really. And then if they officially started like the program again in 2020. And around that time, I was doing my thing at Marine Combat Training. That was the unit I was at, MCT for short. And I get like an email from the head coach of the team, and he basically was like, "Can I give you a call? Talk to you about the Marine Corps boxing team. We think you'd be a great fit." And we talked for like 30 minutes, thick New York accent. He's like, "I saw your resume, and I really thought, man, this would be a perfect addition to the team." And that's how he talks. Like everything's drawn out. It sounds like I'm watching like the Looney Tunes or something. Like,
He's got a cigar in his mouth, probably.
I was just like, I don't know what this guy is, but sure, I'm down for the team. But yeah, I put in the package. My unit was very nice, and they let me go because technically a unit can say, "Heck no, you're not going anywhere." Which that actually happened to me when I was in the AAVs. I tried to go to the wrestling team, and they said, "No, sorry, we need you." So I had been shot down from a unit before in terms of trying to go play sports. So it was nice that I got to do this because, like I said, my unit could have said, "We need you. Sorry, you can't go." But they let me go. And then, yeah, 2020, end of 2020, there was like 18 of us. And I was the platoon commander / team captain, first female platoon commander / team captain of the Marine boxing team, which is kind of cool. But we had, guys, girls, tall, short, black, white, Asian, everything you can imagine. It was like biggest melting pot of diversity on our team, which is really cool. Especially because we did all the same workouts, we did all the same training. There was no, oh, there's female standards and male standards. Like, no, we did the same thing. We all were on the track in the morning running 3 miles. We all did our pad work and our bag work, and the training was all the same. And so the expectations were high expectations just because our job at that point was to box. And so, there was a little bit of reality check for some of the kids that made the team, because some of them were athletic and they made the team off of that. But then when it came to being dedicated and being like committed to 3 times a day, training 3 times a day for months and months and months, they started to fall off. And then we had to basically say goodbye to some of them. But, a few months in, we had a pretty solid group. And my coach, Coach Higgins, he was a Marine as well. Incredible guy, incredible coach. He knew how to take me from like a good boxer to where I am now. Like, he was a guy that really, really brought out that like elite level athlete, and because he believed in me and he taught me to believe in myself. And he pushed us. He pushed us and expected a lot out of us. Like I said, that took us to the next level. When I was with the team, went to nationals, which was the 2020 nationals. It was postponed to I think April 2021. Lost a controversial split decision in the semis. It was one of those fights where like several people thought I won. But long story short, after that fight, I looked at my coach and I said, "I'm never leaving it up to the judges again." I said that and looked him dead in the eye. And then the next nationals, which was actually only 3 months later in August, I stopped like 2 or 3 girls, like TKO. And I said what I was going to do. I was like, I'm not going to leave it to the judges' hands. And that's like when the switch happened, a big switch happened in my game plan, where I was there to dominate, not just show up and like fight well. I was like, no, I need to dominate these fights and make it so that there's no question of who the winner is. And so I won my first nationals. I was the National Golden Gloves 2021 in August, which is separate from USA Nationals. They're 2 different nationals, but either way, I fought 4 nights in a row, had to make weight 4 times in a row. It was very difficult, but did my thing. And then that basically catapulted me into the 2021 Nationals, which was in December. And this was a big one, because this is the one that really, really counts for all the stuff, like all the future tournaments and qualifiers. And then same thing happened there. First fight, TKO. And then the second fight in the finals, I was with the world team member, the girl that was on Team USA. Stopped her, TKO. And so that tournament, with the Marines and everything, it was like, holy crap, we're all here for a reason. I met Coach Higgins for a reason. I'm on this team for a reason, because I wouldn't have not been able to any of that in any other scenario, to be honest with you. Boxing, 2 hours after work, after a whole long work day, I had done that in all of 2019, and it did not work. It did not work. To be at that level, to be an elite boxer, and to train and to like truly prepare for that level of competition, it's basically got to be your job. And so it was like the divine put this in my lap, and it was like a perfect situation where I was able to do that with the Marine boxing team. And accomplish all of that in that short amount of time.
Yeah, that's amazing. The one of the first things that comes to my mind when you mentioned the 3-a-day workouts. So, did you guys also have people looking after nutrition, or at least sort of like, do you have a nutrition coach, I
We had a
guess?
strength and conditioning coach who was also like, I think one of his degrees was on like some sort of nutrition. Then one of our lieutenants, uh, big into nutrition as well. So we at one point were like logging stuff and like trying to figure out what people were burning versus what they're eating. And so we did have that. And like I said, strength and conditioning coach as well. And then obviously the head coach, had his old school mindset on nutrition. But a lot of times, some of the most basic stuff is what actually works the most. Cut down on the carbs before a tournament. Drink a lot of water. Try not to eat past 6 o'clock at night when you're trying to lose weight. And then obviously no soda, just the basic stuff. A lot of Marines didn't. A lot of Marines were learning all this stuff from being on the team. Um, one of my teammates, she was wondering why she was having a hard time making weight. Goes, go find out that she had like 2 steaks the night before a weigh-in. I'm like, girl, that's heavy. That's not going to break down very well. You just had 2 steaks for a weigh-in. That's probably why you're struggling. So some people, zero understanding, zero like knowledge on nutrition. So it was cool to see people learn, and I even learned a lot of stuff too about that. So,
How much weight would you usually have to cut from your walking around weight?
well, at the Naval Academy, that's where I started boxing. Actually, I was walking around. I was actually technically on the BCP, like the overweight. I was actually literally on the program because even though I was good at PT and I passed all the physical tests, I didn't make the tape, and I wasn't huge or anything. I just kind of had a skinny neck and like a thick waist. But I was walking around 168, 167. I was fighting casually at 165. And then, a couple times I'd fight at 156. This is all in college. And then once I got to the elite level boxing, I was walking around more so 160, 165, but then fighting down at 152. And now I'm fighting at 146. So over the past couple of years, I've kind of gotten my weight down a lot. And I probably walk around 10, 12 pounds heavier than when I fight at.
Yeah, it's such a weird concept. It's like, why doesn't everyone just fight at the the weight that they are, right? But it's I've done some yeah, I've done some fitness competitions, so I can definitely understand like sort of the hard dieting, and you're just at a social event and you're like, "Oh, I just want a piece of that ice cream cake." And I mean, I've seen some of the pictures that you posted before, when you were at the Naval Academy and now, and even now, I'm just like, "Oh shit, look at that bicep vein." Like, you're like a lean, mean
Thank
machine.
you. Thank you. Not right now too much because I've been eating good, but yeah, I try to stay within 10 pounds of the fight weight. But yeah, a lot of times, even just walking a couple miles a day, you'll like be surprised doing that and then just eating a little earlier at night and like, cutting down the carbs at nighttime, especially because you're about to go to sleep. These little things can like change everything. It's crazy. They seem little, but they do wonders. So,
So what made you decide to leave active duty and go reserve?
to be honest, since I was a child, I've seen myself being an entertainer. I've seen myself being like a fighter of some sort or something like that. Like I used to, go out in the, playground, and all I wanted was to make everyone laugh and to like make people go, look at, wow, what is she doing? So I break dancing, beatboxing, eating worms to make people like react. I literally be like, who wants to see me eat a worm for $1? And then like 10 kids would come up and start paying me to see me like eat a worm. But that was like third, fourth grade. So I've always had that entertainment slash, I like making people laugh and smile and being funny, but doing that in the ring too. That's been a part of me since I was really young. And I felt that I couldn't really do that in active duty. I couldn't really express that or fully embrace that or utilize that part of me while in active duty because it's your job is to be a Marine, 24/7. And also it can be seen as unprofessional if you are kind of playful and kind of like, you know what I mean? Like artsy and expressive. And so I realized, man, I want to be something special. I want to be a household name. I want to be like a star. I can't do that in Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, sitting in an office in my camis. Like, that's not going to happen. You know, this is not a bad gig. I'm getting paid. Like right now, I'm not getting paid very well at all. This is because I'm, you know, not the best at my job, but that's okay. But it's a commission-based job. But, you know, active duty, you're getting paid on the 1st and 15th. It's a good paycheck, especially, you know, with, you know, officer pay. And it's comfortable. Everything's comfortable. You know, there's like this safety net. You know, even if you're not the best at your job, for example, you're still going to get paid. You know, even if you mess up, you might mess up something. They're not just going to say, pack your bags, you're out of the Marine Corps, unless it's something really, really, really bad. So you're allowed to mess up and you're allowed to like learn from mistakes. And it's not like you're going to stop getting paid and get fired as easily as you would in the civilian world. And so just that like safety net and feeling like, okay, my needs are met. I realized that I was falling into that and not really going after the dreams and the things that I have always wanted to do. And so about a year from my requirement time, that's when I kind of committed to the idea of getting out. And in the Marine Corps, you know, it's called career designation. You have to be career designation. You have to be selected actually to get O3 to be a captain. And I was offered career designation, and you have 2 weeks to either decline or accept. And I waited till the 2 weeks, and then I clicked decline. So that was it. Once you click decline, you can't go back. You can't stay in active duty. You have to move on. And so I took my time to make that decision, and then felt like a big weight was lifted off my shoulders. And now I'm pursuing what I've been wanting to do since I was like 8. You know, I talked about visualization. I would visualize myself being an Olympian when I was like 8 years old. It was in a completely different sport because I never thought I'd box. But, you know, regardless, that's what I saw. That's what I saw myself doing. And right now I'm literally 1 or 2 degrees away from making that happen. And it's getting closer and closer. And I know that had I stayed in, they could have easily said, oh, she doesn't have kids, no dependents, not married, you're going to Japan for 3 years. I have no control of that, you know. Or, you know, you're going to Quantico, you're going to go teach this. And boom, there goes everything that I had worked for boxing. And that's that I couldn't let that happen. So I had to pick the going for my dreams, you know.
And how did you choose Miami?
Like I said earlier, most of my family's living here. So grandma, uncles, aunts, cousins. It's also pretty good in terms of the fight community. There's pretty good training here. And I knew that financially I could save money by living with family up until I start getting, you know, paid a little bit better and figuring out my financial situation. So I came here because of family mostly. And then, yeah, like I said, training. So, and it's East Coast, so it was like a 12-hour drive from North Carolina. It wasn't a drastic move, which is also nice.
So I watch a lot of your videos. My 2 favorite ones, obviously the Michael Jackson video, amazing, because I love Michael Jackson's music, and I wish I could dance like that, but I definitely can't. And although I think I did actually do a Michael Jackson song at a lip sync concert when I was like in grade
Let's
2,
go.
the Free Willy song. Yeah. And then my next favorite one is the one where your mom's in like a blazer and heels, and she's got her hair done, she's got the gloves on, and you're holding pads for her, and she's just doing these little dainty punches, and then the camera like pans over and your grandmother is just staring out the window, looks so angry.
No, she was confused and angry. That sums up our family dynamic right there. Like I said before, you know, the entertainment aspect. I've loved Michael Jackson for like 25 years. I've been watching his videos, and I love to dance too, and I love to perform. And I always have ideas. I'm a pretty creative person, I would say. I always have video ideas and things that I'm thinking of to create. And, you know, that Michael Jackson one was just a prime example. I was like, oh, it's Halloween, No one's going to question why I'm dressed up as Michael Jackson. And I know there's a lot of people in Walmart, and usually people in Walmart are pretty out there. So I was like, man, it'd be funny to just dance around and just see the reactions. So, like I mentioned earlier, the entertainment aspect of who I am, I would love to like be on SNL and like perform and do skits. Yeah, it's 100% like accents, impersonations, falling into like a character and like keeping that character, maintaining it. I love doing that. Like it's super fun. And then even playing instruments, I play 5 instruments and then I sing as well. So if you really think about fighting and boxing, all it is a performance in a lot of ways. I mean, obviously you have an opponent who has a will and has their own agenda too, but it's really it's an art form. And I don't think a lot of people see it that way, but it is, right? It's very similar to dancing, especially boxing, the footwork and the movement and the throwing the feints. It's kind of like dancing, you throw a feint, it's kind of like the pop and lock, and then even the footwork. If you were to do some of the dance moves that Michael Jackson did a little bit, you would actually trick your opponent. Like they wouldn't know what to do because it's like not orthodox. And so there's just a lot of resemblances between the two. And my goal is to get to that point where I'm comfortable enough in the ring, have enough experience where I can really mesh in like the art, the performance, that part of fighting, and then with the aggressiveness and like I'm going to go get you, like combining it together, I think would make a very unstoppable fighter.
So next up for you is Olympic trials?
Next up is the selection camp for Team USA, which is January next month. 6-week camp, because right now there are girls that are on Team USA that did not compete at nationals. Those girls are technically the ones that us as the national champions, we now have to compete against to get on Team USA. So if I make Team USA, if I get selected, then I will compete at the Pan American Games, which is September. If I make it to the finals of the Pan American Games, then I'm automatically selected for the Olympics. I don't have to go to the trials or anything. And then if I don't get selected, then the person that is currently on the team, if she does not get into the finals of the Pan American Games, then that's when the trials are now, it's official. Like the trials will determine who makes the team for the Olympics. So there's a lot of ands, ifs, buts, ors, whens, all that. But for now, my goal is to be the best I can be in January and just like perform and to just really do my best and just be competitive and shine. And my goal is to make team to get selected. That being said, selection is, I don't choose who gets selected. They choose who gets selected, and so that's out of my control. And I'm trying to go in with that mindset we talked about earlier, that more mature, like stoic mindset of I can only control what I can control. And I'm not going to get worked up over things and all that, because at the end of the day, all I can do is do my best.
Okay, so let's say you make it to the Olympics. Then after that, is the goal to turn pro, or would
Yes.
you then try and go to the next Olympics? Okay.
Pro. Yeah, heck no, I'm not trying to get the Olympics. That some people will go into their 30s and try the Olympic thing, and I know some. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but for me, I want to definitely. I actually wanted to go pro MMA last year. Last year, I'd already like decided like I'm going to go pro MMA. I'm not even going to continue boxing, and then I took a step back and reflected and all that. But after the Olympics, and the thing is that with an Olympic pedigree, it basically changes a lot of things in terms of pay and opportunity when it comes to being a pro. Because honestly, anyone can go pro. That's the biggest difference between boxing and other professional athletes. Like, not everyone can go pro in soccer or football or baseball. Like, you have to be legit. Well, in boxing and even MMA, anyone can go pro. You can take someone off the street and they sign some kind of contract, whatever, and they can be a pro. And so going pro is not hard, but going pro with a good resume and an Olympic pedigree, that again, that changes the game in terms of pay and opportunities and, who promotes you and stuff like that. So it's a life-changing situation if you are someone that has the Olympic pedigree and you go pro. I'm not saying that if I don't get that my life's going to be horrible and that I won't have opportunities, because I do still have a pretty good resume, even without the Olympics under my belt. But it just helps, it definitely helps. So,
Would you stick to boxing or would you try MMA as well?
I think I do want to give MMA a try just because I have a Taekwondo background, wrestling background, now boxing, and then blue belt jiu-jitsu. It's like, this kind of seems like maybe it would make sense to at least give it a try. So I would like to give it a try. I've done MMA, I just haven't competed in it. So I've done the MMA sparring and the grappling and the drills and everything. But boxing's always kind of been something that was, okay, I had to take a break from that, focus on this. And I might even consider doing both. Amanda Serrano does that, Clarissa Shields, there's a few other boxers that are also doing MMA. So it's possible to do both as well. So I definitely consider that.
And you got your blue belt in a pretty short amount of time, didn't you?
No, actually, I was on and off with jiu-jitsu for several years just because I didn't commit to it very well. That's my fault, But it took a little bit. Even with my wrestling background, there's still a certain level of technique that you have to have. You can't just be muscly strong and throw people around and think you're going to get a blue belt. You have to have a technical background in it. But even the guy that gave me my blue belt, he was like, yeah, this is a little bit past due. I should have gave you this a while ago. So I was like, it's all good. I probably should have gotten it a little quicker, but regardless, in terms of experience and the practice, I feel like it was good timing. So
nice. Yeah, I just started BJJ about a year ago, so I'm still in
heck yeah,
that white belt phase. But it's crazy how much information is out there, and I'll get into a wormhole looking at videos on YouTube, and it's 35 submissions from Mount, and then I'd go to class and I wouldn't be able to remember any of them. So so then I was just like, okay, I'll watch one video about, one escape or one submission a whole bunch of times. And then at some point during the class when I'm rolling, I'll try that one.
Yeah, that's awesome though that you're doing it. And you love it. It's kind of fun, right? A little bit.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. It's really good. And the gym I go to, there's some really high level people there, but they're very supportive. Yeah. I mean, I still just kind of try not to die every time I'm rolling with people, but from sort of hearing other people talk about jujitsu so often, I know that that's normal and
For
that's
sure.
sort of what I'm supposed to feel at this stage. So yeah, looking forward to progressing throughout the years, but I'll definitely be sticking with it.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, I'm glad you're doing that. I always recommend it to people who are trying to look for a physical, competitive / intense sport to get into. So especially if you're, yeah.
Yeah, especially for women, it's so funny there because, you'd see someone so tiny that you would think, someone on the street might think oh, I'll go try and mess with this person, and then they're just deadly.
Yeah, it's a technical. You can be huge and be terrible, jacked and no mobility, no technique, no awareness of, oh, you got me here, but then, oh, there goes my ankle.
Yeah, it's all about leverage and just all those little things. There's so much to it. It's crazy.
It's an art.
Yes, the gentle art. That's not so gentle sometimes.
No.
I mean, we covered most of the questions. I'm just are there any other topics that you think are important to discuss or that you wanted to talk about?
Yeah, I think just accepting that there's gonna be waves of highs and lows, and adversity is not the enemy, and that rejection is not the enemy, and that I don't know, pain and suffering is temporary. Unless of course if you give into it, then it's gonna last a lot longer. But I was in a lot of pain, spiritually and just mentally 2 months ago when I had made a decision to just go pro and to say screw it to the Olympic dreams. And even with the transition out of the active duty Marine Corps into reserves, I was very, still am, but a lot more lost at that point. Because, Marines, we're we're intense and we're like on the clock and I'm literally like looking at my clock. I'm like, okay, so I'm like 15 minutes early, then I can leave at this time. So they get there at 8:05, and it gives me 2 minutes to go to the bathroom. If I go to the bathroom, then I can turn the clock back on. Like we think like, boom, boom, boom. Okay, he's gonna show up at this time, then, right? Oh, he's 5 minutes late. What's going on? Maybe like we're like to the extreme sometimes when it comes to everything having to be a certain way and perfect. And you go from that, and you come to Miami. Like Miami is crazy. It's crazy out here. Like people, they're on their own program. Like they do what they want. They show up when they want. A lot of party animals, a lot of distractions, a lot of crazy stuff going on. And to go from that like rigid, strict kind of structure of the active duty Marine Corps to this, it's just like it was like a big culture shock. And I thought that because I wanted to get out, that the transition wouldn't affect me as much, but then it did, and I realized, oh my gosh, like I feel pretty alone. Like I don't feel like I have a community. I don't feel like I have friends. I don't feel like I belong anywhere. I feel like I'm a misfit toy. And then with the boxing thing, I'm like, now I'm at another gym. This is like the fourth gym that I've freaking switched to. New coaches, like what's going on, And it was hard. Those times I would cry after practice. I used to never cry after practice. That was never a thing. But that adversity, like I thought about that at nationals when I was competing. I thought about those moments where I wanted to quit and where I had to literally pick myself off the floor and say, no, like I don't have time to quit. I don't have like, no, it's not an option. I know things are hard, but I have to keep going, and I have to keep training, and I have to force myself to like just keep finding a way to win the day and to find the will to keep pursuing these things that I've always wanted to pursue. And those moments, and even my coach would remind me like how hard. He's like, look how hard you work. Like you can't give up now. You can't screw it all up now. And he's right. He's like, don't blow it. And for some people that might stress them out, but for me, I'm like, no, this is. I thought, at this tournament right before that final fight, I'm breathing, I'm like closing my eyes and meditating. I'm like, remember when I was, 2 months ago, just down in the dumps, feeling discouraged and feeling like I had no real reason to even keep fighting. Well, this is the moment that I proved that wrong. And this is for me. This is not for the audience. This is not for my coach. This is not to prove anybody wrong. This is to prove to myself that I am cut out for this and I am good enough and that I am a champion and that I can overcome anything. And I did it for me. And in that fight, it wasn't, like I said, it wasn't about everybody else. And I think in life too, we have to like, when we get over those hard times and we face that adversity, we as people, we start to like realize how great we are and how capable we are. But unless you challenge yourself and unless you put yourself in uncomfortable positions and unless you overcome that, you don't really see your full capability, your full ability, and your potential. And when you don't see your full potential, your life can get pretty mundane and miserable, I think, you know? And so I guess what I'm trying to say is like, challenge yourselves, whoever's listening, challenge yourself. And instead of saying, oh, I can't, I don't know, I wanted to do that. Like, I hate hearing that. I've always wanted to do that. But X, Y, and Z. Like, you're trying jujitsu, and I respect that. Because you could have easily said, I wanted to do jujitsu, but, I just don't have time. Or I just don't have this, or I just don't have that. And find excuses and reasons not to go do something that you want to do. Life's too short to do that. So get after it. Expect to fail. Expect to fall flat on your face. Expect to feel like crap a couple times. But I promise you the reward afterwards of pushing through and like facing your fears and facing your doubts and stuff, it's worth every bit of it.
Awesome. And so before a big fight, do you have the same ritual or routine that you go through?
Yeah. So about an hour and a half before, I lay everything out. I got my uniforms, I got my little clothes, I got my water, my bag. I turn off the TV, and like the lights are not too bright, but they're not too dim. It's like perfect lighting. And I'm just sitting on the bed, I'm just closing my eyes, and I'm happy. It's all happy. It's not, oh my God, I'm about to go out there. What if I blow it? Oh my gosh, like what if she hits me with this? And she's, oh my gosh, she's like 6 feet tall, and she's lengthy and tall. She's already been on Team USA, and they like her already, and they know who she is. So what if I get robbed from the judges? I'm not even thinking about that. I'm literally like, I can wiggle my little toes. I'm in this bed, and it's warm. I'm relaxed. And then about an hour before, that's when I just close my eyes and I start visualizing and I pray. And I know that, not everyone's religious. I'm not religious. I'm spiritual. But I pray. I'm like, everything that I'm about to do, everything I'm going to express in the ring, everything that is going to happen is from a higher power. And it's from something that is stronger and greater and better and more aware than I ever could be as just a small human. And like that power that I express, it's a divine power. And it's a divine entity. And because of that, there's no limitation to what I can accomplish and what I can do. If it comes from me, if it's Stephanie, if it's ego driven, yeah, there's limitations, right? But if it's something higher, something spiritual, the universe, whatever you want to call it, God, I call it God, then there's really not a whole lot that can stop that from being successful and just from being amazing and succeeding. And then continue to visualize. And then about 20 minutes, 30 minutes before, I listen to gospel music, a lot of Kirk Franklin. And then I also listened to a song called Golden by Jill Scott. And it goes, living my life like it's golden, living my life like it's golden. And then I remind myself that I've been living my life like it's golden for a long time. And I've been doing it no matter what. And I'm getting ready to go fight, to go in the arena and go, box. And like, it's awesome. And it's golden. It's like, it's beautiful. And I listen to that song because it reminds me that I've been doing this for so many years, the state tournament, the national tournament for wrestling under the spotlight, 13 years old, 14 years old, whatever, how old I was, just like I'm doing, like I said earlier, doing what God put me here to do. And then I listen to those couple songs that are very uplifting, and I dance a little bit. And then I pack my stuff. And I look at the room one last time, and I'm like, think to myself, the next time I come back to this room, I'm going to be a champion, And I'll even look in the mirror sometimes, and I'm like, champion. Remind myself, like you have to talk to yourself like you're talking to your best friend or you're talking to your Marine, right? You tell these people, you're amazing, like you're great, you got this, you can do it, you can overcome anything. But we don't say that to ourselves. We're like, wow, you look like a fat lard, you look like a whale, you're disgusting. Ugh, you look at you, you're not good enough. Like a lot of us do talk to ourselves like that. Or, are you sure you're able? Are you sure? Are you sure you're good enough? Questioning. So I make sure to talk to myself the way that I would talk to my best friend. And I try to uplift myself and bring myself up. And then we get in the car and we drive over to the venue, and the rest is the rest.
And my final question that I always ask everyone is, what advice would you give to women looking to join the military? And since it's you, I would say looking to join the Marine Corps.
Prepare as much as you can with what with what the the standards are. For example, PFT for the Marine Corps. If the standard is 3 pull-ups for women, train to do better, train to like max, train to be the best in that, so that when you get there and it's time to perform, that even if you have like an off day, that your off day would still put you in a good spot. So be a little bit over prepared in that sense, when it comes to things that are like tangible like that. But then also I would say give yourself grace and forgive yourself if you mess up or if you don't do things perfectly, because sometimes we can be really hard on ourselves, especially as women in the military. If the environment's not necessarily healthy or people are kind of not so accepting, if we don't give ourselves grace, especially for the young women going in, and we don't give ourselves a little bit of a break, then things can get overwhelming pretty easily and pretty quickly. So, understand that, it's okay to mess up. And I know sometimes the environment might not make it seem that way. Like I said, especially if you're a female, like someone's like, I can't mess up. I can't do anything wrong because, everyone's looking, everyone's watching, and they are, don't get me wrong, they are. But as long as it's not a mistake that is like intentional, like doing something just drastically just not good, that's like completely against the rules. But if it's like a mistake that's like normal, that's okay. We're all learning when we're doing something new, when we're transitioning into a different field. We're learning. It's not going to be perfect. So give yourself grace, be prepared in the things you can be prepared, and then realize that it's okay to make mistakes.
Okay, I know I said last question, but I have one more because you did mention pull-ups a couple of times, and I feel like that's the one thing that a lot of women struggle with in the military is that upper body strength. So what is your advice for improving pull-ups?
So pull-ups is all about getting your body used to the amount of reps that you're trying to get to. So what you got to do is do the amount of reps that you would want to do. So if you want to do 20 pull-ups, do 20 pull-ups with whatever it is that you're able to do it with, either a band or the zero gravity, whatever, I'm talking about, the pull-up machines where you can add weight. The goal is to get your body, like I said, used to being able to do 20 pull-ups. So instead of doing 3 pull-ups and then trying to do 4 the next day, my mindset is do 20 with however much it is that, you're able to with the weight in the band and the resistance, and then slowly decrease the resistance until you're able to, get maybe 15 to 20 on your own. But I think a lot of times we get caught up on the number, and the number scares us. But if you're used to the number and the repetitions, then it's actually like a psychological thing where your body's used to the number. And after a while, your body starts adjusting, and then that number becomes easy because you're used to it, and you just kind of slowly decrease the weight. And then before you know it, you're now doing 20 on your own. And that's actually what a Navy SEAL told me, someone that retired a couple years ago. We called him Chief Luna, but that's something that he taught me. Obviously, Navy SEAL, so physical beast. And then I would say another thing is don't be afraid to grab the weights, but you don't have to necessarily do heavy stuff. I don't lift heavy at all. I actually do mostly dumbbells and not bands, but the machines, like the resistant machines.
Cables.
I just do, cables.
Yeah.
I just do a lot of repetition. So I do low weight repetition, working the small muscles, right? That's why I have, pretty good definition, but it's not because I'm like lifting super heavy, doing anything crazy like that. I just do a lot of repetitions. So I say it's almost like endurance training for your muscles. So then getting in a bar and doing pull-ups, your muscles have that endurance to be able to do that. And that all comes from, again, the repetition, more so focus on the reps more than the actual weight and heaviness in itself, if that makes sense.
Yeah, awesome. And I mean, I'm assuming that that's good advice because you can do a lot of pull-ups.
Yeah, well, I know some girls can do 30 or 40, so I don't know how they do it. That's just beyond me.
Yeah, that's impressive. So where can people find you on social media to follow along with your funny videos and your boxing journey?
Steph Simon 94 on Instagram. I think TikTok's the same. I'm trying to get better at TikTok. And then Facebook, I guess Stephanie Simon. There's probably a billion of them, but it's a one with a boxing headgear on, if you can find that.
Awesome.
And
Okay.
that's it.
Thank you so much for your time today. I'm so happy we finally got to connect.
Thank you.
And that I finally got to do this interview.
Yes, it's a long time coming. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening. If you'd like to help support this podcast, please subscribe and leave a rating and review on your Apple Podcast app.